Transmitting to you from Old Heart Radio.
Prepare to have your bones chilled and your hairs raised. It's the WacArnold's Brothers podcast.
Welcome home.
Improvement. What?
Number 17, do you know what I mean?
Yo. That's right, man. The WacArnold's Brothers are back with a freshish episode. And this is, like you said, my man, number 17. Dude, we're plowing
Or
through
17,
these.
yeah, 17. I think I said 18, but yeah, 17.
No, I think you said 17. The rhyme was perfect.
Oh, yeah,
Dang, dude.
I did say.
Coming off Candyman 3.
Ugh.
We're taking a hard turn into something a little different, a different side of horror.
A lot different. Yeah.
Lifeforce.
Yeah.
1985, I believe.
Yeah.
Like this when you sent me the idea for this, I immediately looked it up, and then you mentioned director Tobe Hooper with it, and I was like, in my head I was thinking like sci-fi horror movie, Tobe Hooper, yes. Like,
Well, and another thing it has like going for it is that one of the two writers that wrote the screenplay is Dan O'Bannon, who is most famously known for Alien, but he wrote and directed one of my favorite horror movies, Return of the Living Dead.
Oh,
Such a great movie in my opinion.
Return of the Living Dead. I feel like
classic,
I feel like I've seen it once, but I also feel like I've seen like the third one.
There is, the first two are really good, and then the third one is where it starts to veer into like different, because the first two are it has two of the same actors that played different roles, but anyway, the first one's classic.
Okay, I'm gonna have to like revisit it then this year. Maybe that'll have to go on my like household Halloween list.
Yes, you will not be let down. It's classic.
Oh man. But anyway, this movie, Lifeforce. So yeah, that was the other thing, like you were mentioning, when you there's quite a bit I think attached to it just with those two names, like in my opinion, because like Alien is like, for me it's like a fucking like seminal movie. Like I have, whether it's like nostalgic memories or like love for the movie itself, it goes
one of the greatest of all time. Yeah.
But this movie, like, it definitely has like some interesting. There's like a couple of shots of like interiors that remind me slightly. of,
for
like,
sure.
Of Alien, and like
near the beginning. Yeah.
There's some aesthetic that kind of works, but yeah, this movie just dives right the hell in though, dude. Like that was the thing that got me. Lifeforce. So it
real quick. One more cool thing about this movie is that the London Symphony Orchestra worked on this movie, which I thought was interesting. You don't ever see that often, where it's like an orchestra composing a score for a movie. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's why it had like that grand opening, like you were saying.
Dude. Well, yeah. Like when that like kind of like popped up in the credits, I was so surprised. There's two things that surprised me about the credits. One was the London Symphony Orchestra. The other one was Patrick Stewart, which we'll definitely get to later.
Yeah.
But I was really surprised because I was like, that kind of lent some credibility to this. And then I looked at
totally.
And at this time, I believe what it was like Tobe Hooper had just entered like a 3-picture deal with a studio.
Okay.
Hold on, I gotta look it up again. And like this was either like the second or the first movie.
Okay.
In that series.
That's pretty cool.
It is, but it was like it was like the same series. It was like a series of movies that like also ended, like one of the deals was like that he was going to be able to make Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 out of it.
Oh, that's rad. Yeah, that movie's that's another.
Yeah, so he definitely like, okay, so yeah, that's what it was. It was, he entered a 3-picture deal with Canon Films, which is who made this movie, who presented this movie, following Poltergeist. So that was like, and apparently this was all with a collaboration with Steven Spielberg. So,
oh wow,
yes, and so like he got to make Invaders from Mars, which I've never seen, but the Texas Chainsaw Massacre too, because of this
that's
movie.
cool. Okay, have you ever seen the Funhouse?
I think like years ago, yeah.
That has one of the coolest like monsters in it. But anyway, like
we're branching off. We're branching off.
But yeah, like you said, the movie kind of just jumps right in.
It
which,
does.
You're
like right into just that kind of space sequence. The crew of the Churchill is
It's August 9th, 2:30 p.m.
at 2:30 p.m.
Yeah.
And the crew of the Churchill is like approaching Halley's Comet.
Yeah.
Right? Like that's the whole like green entity that they're approaching in this sequence. It's got some really cool, like, it's kind of cheese, but it's got this cool kind of, I don't know, aesthetic. That
for the time though, that probably looked really cool. And it still does, but yeah.
I mean. It was kind of cool if you ask me,
but yeah, they like discover this anomaly, a coma inside the comet that they're like, let's just go check this out.
They immediately, they find out it's like 150 miles long or something like that, like 3 miles tall, and they're just like, yeah, let's go look at it. And then you see what I thought was so funny was like their exploration of this was like, I would have been so sketched out if I was not the captain, or the colonel giving all the orders, where it was like, all right, let's hop in these like rink-a-dink space suits and like kind of jettison in this strange fucking vessel.
Yeah.
And you're just like, I don't know, but the vessel itself was really kind of interesting.
Right.
It looked, when they were going in it, like the set design was, just the design of it was kind of cool, and that's where you saw some elements, like kind of those trace elements.
Yeah.
Maybe like some, Geiger kind of.
I agree. I felt that same way,
Yeah, it was cool. But then they immediately discovered. I clocked this. It was all within the first 10 minutes of this movie. that they're journeying into this foreign vessel at the tail end of Halley's Comet, and that they discover these like giant winged creatures floating around within this vessel.
And by the way, there's 4 of them. There's Colonel Tom Carlson, who's one of the main characters in the movie.
Yeah.
And I think it says one of the other person's names, but there's a girl and 3 guys. And anyway, yeah, like you said, what were you going to say? They discover this what?
Oh, I was just talking about they just discovered those giant
bat creatures. Yeah, and there's a ton of them.
Yeah, they're like, there's hundreds, and then the other guy's like, there's thousands.
And they're different size. Some are bigger than others. Some are like a kaiju size, and some are like a regular size.
Yeah, it was wild. And they immediately decide to net one up and take it back.
Yeah, they're like we're just gonna take this with us.
I was like, these astronauts are fucking ballsy, dude. And then, it was like this giant kind of like light opening starts kind of opening right in front of the astronauts within the vessel.
Right.
While
before they can leave, yes.
While on the outside, the people in the shuttle, are experiencing, witnessing this, the spaceship transform or whatever, all as well.
Mm-hmm.
They're like, it took a giant umbrella.
Yeah, that's what they say exactly. Because it kind of dwarfs over the Churchill, and which would be very fucking creepy.
Yeah.
And but at the same time, like you said, they're inside and they see this giant bright light. And I mean, anybody that's out there exploring, as stupid as the idea might be, would be fascinated by that and want to go check it out. I mean, it's
100.
You know what I mean?
You're already so deep within this situation.
Yeah.
It's just fucking. Of course, I'm going to keep going. Just for the sake of knowledge and experience. And so they do.
Yes.
The colonel first
Yeah, he goes in by himself, kind of like they stay back by the opening, and he goes in himself at first. And this is like the second big discovery in this place.
And like throughout this this whole kind of part of the scene, like he is is expressing that he's like experiencing like a pull or some sort of like, you know, like he dances around the word attraction, but
right,
he's like, oh yeah, like, you know, something's leading me, like bringing me like here or whatever. And then if there's this really cool, I noted this really cool like camera shot.
I was just gonna say that
where he comes upon these like crystal case, like encased
pods,
or these crystal pods that have like these two men and a female in there, like all butt fucking naked, but this cool camera scene where he's like drifting, and he's like head is slowly aligning based on like the shots of the female's head and like his, and then they eventually line up. Like, with this, because I
thought they were hanging upside down at first, the way the camera was. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because he's like moving around. I thought they were hanging upside down at first, and like you said, he ends up, you know, right side up. And and I like one thing that was funny about this is you mentioned that they're stark ass naked.
Yeah.
Is that it just shows the girl completely naked, but on the guys, like where their crotches are, they make it kind of look blurry, so there's not just guy dick. You know what I mean? Like I thought that was interesting.
They're not hanging dong out in the fucking movie, but you see like Bush and all with this fucking lady for like.
Yeah.
It was definitely like that was the taste of '85 right there.
Yeah, it was. Of course, just this like proportionate buxom.
I was just like,
you know,
but it was kind of like, you know, and that was like the part of it that kind of like made it laughable to me, is like in 2021 the hyper focus on her titties and like everything was just like, you know, it was just like, it's just obnoxious after a while. You're just sort of like, okay, get to the fucking movie.
Yeah. Right.
It was
just
beautiful lady, beautiful actress, I'll say that. But,
yeah, they could have been in clothes. It was just they had to do that for like, you know.
Yeah.
Because at the time, that was the time of the slashers, where in every slasher there was like a topless chick getting, you know, sliced to death or whatever.
Well, that's what I mean. Like that's like that, like you know, direct reflection of the time, where it's like you can tell this is like an 80s movie.
Yeah.
Based on like certain things, you know.
But
anyway, so they decide to try at the end of this whole sequence. They just like this enchanting sequence where like one of the other astronauts like comes upon, you know, eventually all the astronauts come upon the crystal cases. One of them seems to start experiencing some sort of like exhaustion almost.
Yeah.
And
he also makes a comment about like how beautiful she is, and she's the most perfect thing he's ever saw, you know, which at the time kind of like later on this all makes sense essentially.
Oh, totally. Like it you know, and that's the thing, like you know, it all like the fact that they're supposed to be like really hyper attractive beings. Because even like when you see like the other two actors, like they're supposed to be like, you know, they're really handsome dudes.
They were,
but they, you know, they're supposed to have some sort of like potential pull at the, you know, and you're experiencing a little bit of that through these characters. But they decide to bring them back to the ship also.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Like what a haul. You know what I mean?
Which I love that there's this like this weird cut, like whereas like they start trying to like figure out if they can like move the pods, and like one of the astronauts kind of like moves it, you know, and then it just goes to like it kind of, that's what I think when it goes to black and then cuts to like 30 days later.
30 days later, yeah.
Which I was like, what? But then it's like 30 days later, and you're kind of like focused on, I believe, Earth.
And this is where the first person we meet is his name is Dr. Bukowski.
Yeah, Dr. Bukowski.
And they're
Always
basically,
trustworthy.
we learn here that like the communications with the Churchill are down, that they're floating in orbit towards Earth, but they're on a wrong trajectory.
Yeah.
And their trajectory hasn't changed since they left, and they deduce that something's wrong, and they decide to send another shuttle to Columbia to go out and check what's going on.
Yeah, and I love how fast that happened.
Yeah.
That was such like a so like it was like this scene where they're just like he like I think Bukowski turns to this other guy and he goes Columbia and he goes Columbia and then they send the rocket. There's like a shot of the rocket going up. But also this is all taking place like within the context of like Britain's space agency.
Yeah, it's the fuck, I wrote it down, damn it.
Okay.
Or no, it's the it's the European Space Research Center in London.
in London.
Yes.
So they decide to send up the Columbia to go check on the supposedly derelict ship.
Right.
And what I loved like the scene of like the Columbia approaching the Churchill.
Mm-hmm.
It just kind of reminded me. I was like, I thought it was kind of cool that they weren't really jumping into like a really like far off future or anything with these like space traveling and whatnot. These rockets both look like, you know, like modern rockets for the time and everything. And I thought that was kind of cool because it was like this could be like what we're doing.
Right.
Anyway, so they dock. So the Columbia docks, and then there's another cool sequence of like that camera angle kind of turning as these characters are approaching, which reminds me of 2001.
Okay.
A little bit. It was like I feel like that was kind of like a maybe like a nod because the characters are kind of like walking in that white hallway and everything.
I know. I get what you're saying. Yeah.
And they so that once they get into the Churchill, that's when like shit starts getting kind of eerie.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, they notice it's like completely burnt. You know, at first they just like when they first come in, they just see signs that it's been burnt. But they kind of make their way up, and this is where you see, you know, the demise of everyone. Basically, there's just a bunch of burnt corpses.
Yeah, and some of them look gnarly too. Like some of them are like out of shape. Like there was one that like looked like it had been like stretched, like the neck had been stretched or something like that.
Yeah. They also try to like grab the tape logs, you know.
Yeah, and then that's when one of the crew members of the Columbia discovers what's in their like holding deck or whatever. I can't remember what they kept calling it, the tug deck or something like that.
Tug deck, yeah. They find the three pods, but there's no the bat creature. You know, we don't see right now. It's just they find and we don't see the bat creature again. Sorry, spoiler alert. But yeah, they just find the three. They find the three body in the pods, and then it does like another jump where now they're
back on Earth, right?
Yeah, they're back on Earth, and they're talking about their find and doing like a dissection on them. And
yeah, I love it. Yeah, it cuts back to like the space agency, and it's like a bunch of guys just like sitting around the table smoking cigarettes with their heads in their hands, just like not saying anything to each other. Well, because it's like, and then they start talking about shit. But like, I mean, like seriously though, like it would be a situation where you're just like, the fuck it did, like what the fuck happened? Like,
yeah, and one of them kind of explains that like like how the case got open, and this is another case where someone mentioned something like, you know, I would like felt compelled to do it, or I was like pulled to do it, like opening the female's pod.
Yeah, which I thought was an interesting choice not to show that, like just because I was interested to see what those like containers were made of, but they kind of like they made it known that it wasn't like a substance that they were like, you know, aware of.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, because they weren't like floating in a liquid, or it was just that's a good point. It was more like a pressurized cabin, I guess.
Yeah.
Because the next thing we see is just she's laying on on an operating table with a blanket over her.
Yeah. And like there's there's people, she's kind of in like a quarantine, it seems like.
Yes.
You know, people have like these weird little oxygen masks on and stuff like that. And then it's like that's when like the security guard that's like kind of watching over her starts sort of.
Well, that's what were you gonna say?
Isn't that what like it kind of like?
Well, Bukowski's like watching this kind of happen as it's happening, but you see like a group of like 4 of these scientists, like you said, with these face masks leave, and then one kind of comes back and you know, you kind of learn later with like what we're talking about with like attraction, but it almost looks like he was like kind of like in a trance when he went back into the room, because he goes back into the room by himself and he starts pulling the blanket off of her, and then this is when we realize that, you know, she just, her eyes open wide and she pops up and
yeah,
you know.
Well, and like you mentioned, like Bukowski's has like a bunch of screens in his office.
Yeah, he's kind of watching it.
He's kind of monitoring the situation while watching this like Haley's Comet news report.
That's right. Yeah.
Like I didn't fully understand. Like I mean, I guess maybe the Haley's Comet was just part of like the book that this was based on, so they probably kept playing with it. But I was waiting for that to have like some sort of like grander meaning, like it's Haley's Comet because of this.
Yeah, because they just make a line of like the newscaster makes a line about how Haley's comet means disaster or something like that. You know what I mean?
I guess that's yeah. I guess that. But you're right. So like the dude in the who like originally kind of goes back in, like you were saying, and like starts sort of in this trance-like state, approaching the female alien. Really, like you don't know if it's a human.
Yeah, she's referred to as Space Girl.
Space Girl. He basically is the first like occasion where you see like the some of the powers of this person, this Space Girl has.
Because she like pops up and he kind of gets closer and she starts
butt ass naked.
Yeah, butt naked, and she just they start making out, and you're like, what the hell's going on here?
And she like takes off his oxygen mask and stuff.
Yeah.
Bukowski like eventually like rushes down to the scene because he sees like the flashes on the screen or something like that, right?
Because it's the first time you see she like, she sucks the life force out of him. She's like kissing him, and then you see this like, it's almost like a ethereal, like ghostly image, you know. It's like these blue lines that are flying through the air and flying out of him and into her mouth. And she just turns him into like a drained fucking corpse.
Yeah, a gnarly looking thing, dude.
Yeah, he's just like all shriveled up, like he's been dead for a long fucking time.
Yeah, that was one of the interesting and really cool things about this movie in general, was like the makeup and like some of the special effects was on.
Totally.
And like
but yeah, like you
one of them.
Like you said, Bukowski like makes his way down, you know, and he also kind of gets
lulled into
that's a good way to put it. And although he doesn't suffer the same fate, she kind of sucks some of his power out too. But you kind of wonder why she didn't just kill him too, because she just like sucks some of his power and then leaves him there, and you can tell that he's tired, but she just leaves him there and proceeds to wander butt fucking naked through this facility.
Which is like, it was really funny, like that continued for a while, just because like they made it a play in the movie, like everybody was like on walkie-talkies with each other, like, watch out for a beautiful naked girl wandering the premises, you know. And so like,
I wonder do you remember Men in Black 2?
Oh yeah.
How like Lurlina, how when she comes to Earth and she's like walking around in lingerie for a while, I wonder. I doubt it, but I wonder if that was like a little nod to this. Like that was cool. PG-13, so she wasn't naked, but it kind of gave me the same vibe.
That'd be cool if that was, dude. That'd be a really cool nod.
But anyway,
yeah. So
you said, they're like talking on what they're like. You'll never believe what I'm looking at.
Yeah, exactly. It's a bunch of older like Brits.
Yeah.
Like blown away by a pair of titties and can't believe
because it gets to the point where there's like three of them, trying to
approach Space Girl.
Yeah, they're like, Miss, come with us,
Yeah, and that's when you see some other powers from her.
Yeah,
she
for sure.
Like raises her hand up or whatever, and just like zaps the couple, like the two goons away.
Well, because the first one, it was like a Vader force choke. Like he's just like, whoa.
Because it was so funny, dude, how he was approaching her. He was like offering her a cookie that he had just been eating.
Wow.
He was like, you want the and she's like fucking force choked his ass.
Yeah, and then she like storm like electricity almost looks like the other guy. Just But she leaves the older guy. She doesn't kill the old guy. You know what I mean? He's like standing there like bewildered as she just.
Whoa.
And then she uses her power one more time to shatter like every single plate glass like window in the place and just leave stark naked. That was cool.
It was a dope like
a nice
shot,
opening shot of like what we're in store for. You know what I mean?
Totally. Well, and you know, like this movie, it definitely that's what I mean when it like, you know, just jumped off. I remember I paused it at like 10 minutes. I was like, whoa, this movie is moving along already. Like they're already basically showing you everything that the movie's billed as.
Yeah.
So there's got to be a lot of story in the back end. You know what I mean?
There is. There's a lot that happens in this movie.
There is.
Because now it's like the next day and we get there's police there obviously investigating, and this is where we get introduced to like another main character,
right?
Colonel Kane. Yes.
Colonel Kane. Is the other guy captain, or is the other guy, was I calling?
Who? Because we also meet Dr. Falada here too.
Oh yeah, Dr. Falada, the dude with the magnificent hair.
Yeah, because Kane comes in. Yeah, he does have great hair. That's a good point. Because Kane comes in and he's kind of asking about, you know, what happened, and this is the first time where Bukowski mentions that when she overpowered him, that it was like overwhelmingly sexual.
Yeah.
And then Kane also asks about like where she come from, and then they also mention something about an escape pod missing from the Churchill.
Yeah, and that's I think really the first time you hear about the escape pod.
Right.
And so you're like, well, what is that about? But it is interesting because I think throughout this movie, the like Bukowski guy, like he's probably the only guy that like doesn't get like killed from like the life force sucking, right?
No, you're thinking of Kane. You're thinking of Kane.
Oh, you're right.
Because another interesting little tidbit that happens here is, it's like Falada is obviously very bright because he comes up with other things later before his demise, but he mentions that he thinks that she drained the life force from the guys, kind of like a vampire, like a psychic vampire, essentially.
Yeah, because there's this like shot where like I can't remember who, but somebody asked him about like, well, what does happen after death, and he like, goes on this like spiel about how. Anyway, he's like, interested in life, mortality, basically. So it was kind of fitting that he kind of deduced that. Also, I like the word deduce.
Yeah, it's a good word.
So yeah, but basically, then they get like appraised of. Like the body and everything, like you said, the Kane gets appraised of the body, and eventually they go to like look at like they. Well, I guess before that though, it's the shot with the two guards.
Yeah,
and that whole thing I thought was such a funny sequence, dude. It was like, so these two guards are like watching over the other two naked guys.
Yeah,
who are still in their crystal pods or whatever.
Yes,
but the much like Space Girls, they eventually like the two naked guys wake up and boom, like explode all the glass.
Yeah,
and like the guards,
there's flames and dude,
it's wild. And the guards like run down to the end of the hallway, cock their guns, and just, you know, like, because these guys are just approaching them in the midst of all these like glass shattering and all this shit.
I mean, I would have done the same thing. I would have started firing too.
And they start trying to like just hose them down, and
it doesn't work though.
They're catching bullets. These alien guys are catching bullets.
They're like Terminators.
Yeah, dude. Dude, exactly. Just absorbing it until.
I love this part.
Guards clink off a couple grenades and flop them in there, and then just dive behind the stairwell.
Yeah, it's so great. And then it just instantly jumps to like Kane and Falada hearing the commotion and like running down there. Like this movie just kind of happens fast because, you know, they run down to check out, hear this loud sound because, like you said, chaos just ensued. And this
blew up part of the building.
And this is when they're like, well, we should do an autopsy on like the life sucked corpse that happened a little bit ago.
Yeah, because Falada's
there's a
like,
lot of interesting like scenes that happen in a row.
Yeah, Falada's like, well, we can't do an autopsy on these two.
Right.
So that's when, like, they go to the autopsy of the guard whose body was drained.
Yeah.
And they unveil the corpse a little more, and it's fucking gnarly looking, dude.
Yeah, it is.
And when the doctor goes to approach it and basically like start the autopsy, there's this great shot of like the eyes opening on the corpse, and it comes to life again, and sort of.
Yeah. It's like,
yeah, dude. It looks ridiculous. And the doctor, one of the doctors seems to like have that like, it made eye contact, so it's not like sucked into its gaze. And
true.
The corpse
and it does
the life force.
Yeah.
Fucking
he does. He just drains the doctor.
Yeah.
And then the coolest part is that he drains the doctor, and then it makes him look like it has these cool effects where his face is like changing, and he turns back into what he looked like.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Before he got drained himself.
It's a really cool sequence, man.
And they end up putting him into isolation, and this is where Falada has another one of his like, he's like, there's a pattern forming, and those that suck the life come back to life sometime later. Like he's starting to form these like hypotheses.
Yeah, exactly. He's the one that really kind of puts that together. Like everybody else just kind of like is like, oh shit, okay, now we understand.
Yeah.
But yeah, like it's
a lot of things happen in the next like little chunk having to do with them making discoveries about this whole thing.
Yeah, because then they find another body, but this time out in public.
Yes.
And it's out in like a park.
At Hyde Park, yeah.
At Hyde Park, where these two goons recant this tale of seeing like a scantily clad lady, at least, walking with another lady, and who they thought were gonna basically just go bang in the woods or in the park, or something like that.
Because the corpse they find is also like naked, so this is where we learn that the space girl probably has some clothes now.
Exactly, blending in a little bit more as she goes.
And
so
then
it seems like it's learning as it's like.
Yeah, for sure. And then so like I said, there's like a lot of things that happen quick, where that leads them to like come up with an idea of what's going on. Is that it's now back at the facility, and the guy that's in isolation, he ends up turning back into like a drained corpse, and actually kind of like it like falls asleep. Falls dead, and one of the people like pokes him in the stomach, and it looks like his body's like disintegrated into sand.
Yeah.
And so this is when they deduce that you come back to life after 2 hours, but if you don't feed in a certain amount of time, you're gonna die.
Yeah, and it was again like another really cool sequence of seeing that body, like go from like, this regular security guard to that corpse again.
The next one's even cooler with how the female corpse like it. Because in the next room over, it's the female that they found at the park. And she comes back to life too.
First though, they see the doctor though, the doctor who hasn't fed at all.
That's what I'm talking about. Yeah.
Oh, and then when he I just love that sequence when he it runs into the gate or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. It was, and she kind of does the same thing, but her like disintegration and explosion is even cooler.
It is, dude. She gets like her body looks like it almost gets bloated for a second, like once it starts waking up, but it's like, but it looks like it starts like almost like it's bloated for a second, and then like it's just like struggling against the restraints it's on. Like it's a wild scene to watch, because you're
both of them.
You're watching like, on the monitor, like the heart rate go up and up and up and up and up, and it's just like, kind of tense, but really like, it's wild because like it seems like even when it's like dying like that, it's like blowing up like some of the monitors and stuff, so that they just have like just fucking auxiliary powers, man. It's crazy.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like God, dude, again, like the makeup job on these things were just like creepy as fuck to me. Like
Toby Hooper had a way of that with his movies, of like really great effects or really great creature design. Like,
that's what I'm saying. Like, this is a Toby Hooper movie watching it, like, because of some of these things,
I agree.
Like, it's so fucking cool. I'm so surprised I've never seen this movie before.
That's what I'm saying. I completely agree. You know what I mean? I'm surprised it took me this long to see it, and I'm glad I did.
Yeah,
but
sure. But then they discover the Churchill, right?
Like, yeah,
or the pod that
yeah,
had escaped the Churchill.
Yes,
and
yes.
They discover that it's landed in Texas.
Because what's funny here is that, so they say they found it in Texas, and then like we immediately jump to the next scene where Carlson comes to talk to them in London, but it doesn't explain like the time period, like because he just comes in and he's like clean shaven and looks rested.
Yeah, yeah, and it's like it feels like the next day.
Yeah, which is probably like 2 days or something.
Yeah, but then so they basically invite him in, Carlson.
Yeah.
So they can try and understand the situation. They're like, hey,
yeah,
will you please like fill us in whatever you know? And he has trouble kind of remembering some elements.
Right.
But he does sort of recant, like, bring them up to speed on like how they discovered the body a little bit, or the body of space.
Yeah.
At least.
And he explains how like they died one by one. First one of them, destroyed a bunch of equipment, but didn't remember it. And he was the first one they found dead. And there is a flashback that shows him, and he's one of those like life-sucked corpses. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And Carlson just kind of explains that, one by one, the rest of them died, but for some reason he didn't. And like you said, he explains that he doesn't really remember much, but that he does remember seeing the ship coming into Earth's orbit, and that he didn't want to expose to the world what happened. So it shows this flashback of him starting the fire and burning the bat creature.
Yeah.
Which you learn but this is where you learn, like,
with this cool looking like ray gun looking thing.
Yeah. Because he tried to destroy everything, and unfortunately he didn't succeed. But yeah, he burns everything, and he barely makes it into the escape pod and flees before the ship, basically incinerates.
Yeah, and I mean, like, it's quite the fucking epic tale.
Yeah.
It's one of those like interesting, like you keep waiting ever since like you hit like that moment in the movie earlier where it's like 30 days later and you find out the ship's been floating. You like it's like a fulfilling sequence, him recanting this tale, because you're just like, you keep wondering what the fuck happened on that ship.
He also says something else interesting here, where he explains how part of him didn't want to go, and that leaving her was the hardest thing he ever did.
Yeah, that line, like, that was such an interesting standout line.
It really was.
Like, because you're just like, I mean, you'd assume that he would be like happy to be like free of the situation. So like,
right,
to think that dude still has like some sort of pull, you're just like, okay. But then I mean, you learn that like his link is deeper for sure.
Yeah, that eventually,
like right afterwards, like of this though, it's like a sequence of him like sleeping, and he has this nightmare where like it seems like Space Girl like invades his dreams or whatever.
Yeah, they're like getting freaky, and well, first the shot was really cool because at first he like wakes up in the dream and he sees this bat creature, like makes its way towards him and then transforms into the girl.
Yeah,
I thought that was cool.
It was this cool like bat wings out, and then like as it gets closer, it's like all of a sudden the lady, and like the lady's taking his shirt off.
Yeah, and then she like seduces him, and they're frantically making out.
They're getting freaky. There's titties out again.
Yeah.
There's
surprise.
Lights. There's.
I love when he wakes up. He has one of the best like male screams in like a.
Yeah, dude. you don't
horror
get
sci-fi movie. You know what I mean?
you don't get a ton of them like that. You know,
It's true.
especially in that shot where it's like him waking up all sweaty.
Yeah.
Like just black background. He's just like, ah.
Yeah, I can't do it justice.
Yeah, it's wild. It was good. That's a good call, man. But you know,
But,
they immediately like you know, Kane and some of the other doctors come in and they're immediately like trying to like figure out what happened, and then it jumps to what's his name going? Have you ever
Falada? Yeah.
Falada, have you ever been hypnotized?
So before we jump into the hypnosis sequence, which is arguably one of the coolest fucking scenes in the whole movie. Like, I loved this hypnosis scene. It was really well done. But before we jump into that, we got to mention really quick that we also learn that this needle-like shaped object is heading towards Earth, which is obviously the same ship or the same, you know, alien ship that they found the creatures and the girl in. So that's heading towards Earth now, which is like not a good thing.
No, seems like impending doom.
But this hypnosis scene might be kind of hard to explain because there's a lot going on. But for anyone that hasn't seen this movie, this sequence is incredible.
So basically, just to kind of set it up, I guess it's like Carlson gets hypnotized, you know, and he's recounting that he has this like link with Space Girl's mind.
Yes.
And so you see these intermittent shots for a little bit of like, you know, Carlson explaining what Space Girl's doing, and then you see these shots of this woman who's no longer the woman that you originally saw.
Yeah.
But a different
She's in a
actress.
different body. Yeah.
Yeah, and so it's a different body for the Space Girl, and it's basically this like Carlson's explaining how Space Girl's like initiating almost like a hunt, you know, where it's like she's trying to find a suitable person to, you know, a healthy person, and then it's like he describes, you know, the guy that the actress like stumbles upon. And this is all happening in real
exactly. That's why I'm saying it might be kind of hard to explain, because because she's looking for someone. She doesn't want to kill the person because she doesn't want to attract more attention. She just wants to suck some life force. But there's also something interesting here where it's like he's talking about how he's connected and how she's visiting him in his mind, like mental contact, and that what was I just gonna say? And that like his mind is not entirely own. And that's like, it's like two minds, Ellen's and the vampires. But this is where we learned that she has like, we thought that maybe that was all of her powers, but no, she can jump from like body to body and mind to mind. Yeah,
which is like a wild, like, how do you catch something like that?
But the whole scene is so cool, how he's in the hypnosis and he's talking to them about the license plate and the car, and like you said, it's like happening in real time.
Yeah, they're like, you know, Kane's like asking him about like, well, can you see the license plate? What model is the car? And he's like,
a white Volvo.
Yeah. It was really cool. Like I was really surprised by that. It was, you know,
because we learned that she like gets in the car with this guy and they're driving down the road. She ends up seducing him, and as the guy in the car's hand is on her leg, Carlson sort of pops up awake and breaks the link.
Yeah.
But we learn here that right now her name is like the body she's in or whatever is named Ellen. So they decide, you know, based on the information they have, they call it in to try to avoid something happening, but now they know where to look next. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, and then like you said, so like so now they have a lead on the Space Girl. There's also the information about the ship, you know, like you mentioned.
We also learned
so there's now like multiple things that are kind of impending.
Falada also thinks that her original body must be hidden, and that her original body must be hidden, but she can jump from body to body.
Yeah, and this is also the sequence where you see Falada. he has this item, a sword of sorts.
Yeah, it's like this giant fucking like lead iron sword.
that you're just like, why? Like, it's that classic thing, I guess. Like, and you introduce, was it right? You introduce a gun into like a plot, like it's gonna be used later. So that's why I kept thinking about that. I was like, that has to come into play later. Why is there just this shot of him holding this, like pulling the sword out of a box, basically? But,
speaking of Falada, we kind of leave Falada here for a while, and he's not in the movie for a little bit, but we leave him as he's like doing some experiment, and this creepy looking security guard comes in, and they kind of have a little conversation, but then it leaves on that for a while. We have no idea what's going on. Like, the way I felt is that this guard looked like he was under control of one of the vampires or something, possibly like a victim, maybe.
Yeah, it definitely looked like he definitely looked off, you know.
Yeah,
and so it was kind of this weird. He was like, oh,
because
right there.
Like the next important parts that happen involve Kane, Carlson, and this character named Percy. And this next part is really cool too.
Are you talking about the hospital?
Yeah, they go because they go to this Thurston hospital.
Yeah.
To check out this lead on Ellen and try to find Ellen. Yeah. And this whole, like, everything it leads to is incredible.
Well, this is where you finally meet Patrick Stewart's character.
Yeah.
Which I was waiting this entire time. I was like, where is he? Where is he? Where is he?
Man, yeah. I thought he was just going to be this little, like, dinky role, but he ends up, having a pretty good part.
Yeah, he does. Dr. Armstrong.
Dr. Armstrong, yeah.
Yeah, so he basically leads them to Ellen Donaldson.
Yes.
And Kane and Carlson go up to...
And Percy.
And Percy?
Yeah, that's the three of them.
When they go to meet Ellen?
Yeah, they're all in this whole sequence together.
Oh. Well, anyway, so like when they go, and like it's like at her apartment or whatever, right?
Yeah, because she like lives in the hospital.
And it's such a weird sequence. So,
yeah.
Like Carlson like approaches her and is like, I gotta see if you're in there or whatever. And then he's like, it's like,
well,
it's so funny. It's like, it's just like this sequence where he's basically like I'm gonna have to get rough with her, and he looks at Kane and he goes like do you want to leave? And Kane goes says something like, I'm a natural voyeur, and sits down.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I was like, what is happening?
Because he's trying to he's trying to have maybe a sexual link with her to try to draw her out, possibly.
Yeah, there's so much sexual energy in this movie. But yeah, so he rips off her robe or whatever, and she's just wearing her nightgown, and then he starts shaking her a little bit, and then pulls her hair, and he's just yelling at her, and then there's these really just intense shots of the camera zooming up on their head and stuff like that, all through this. And you're right, he's just trying to establish a link, and I believe he does. I mean, he kisses her or whatever.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. And she faints.
Yeah. And then they just put her to bed.
Yes.
But that's when you learn they go to meet Dr. Armstrong again, and they're like, hey, I saw this description of a person with a birthmark on their face or whatever.
Yeah, he's like a fat man with the gray hair and a birthmark.
Yeah. And Patrick Stewart's like, oh yeah, I immediately knew who that was.
Yeah, that's a child murderer named Jeffrey.
He's in isolation.
Yeah.
But he goes to take him to visit, and but first they go to his office or some shit, right?
Well, and this whole scene didn't play out at all like I thought it would, because they do the office part's not really important, but they end up going to the room of the guy in isolation, and he's sleeping, and they're getting ready to shoot him with the like whatever is in the syringe to put them into sleep for the hypnotherapy.
There's the classic shot of that guy like loading up a syringe with some
which was unnecessary.
Yeah.
But before he goes in to put it in him, he like flips around and puts it into Dr. Armstrong. And I didn't see any of this coming. And basically he explains his action is that when Dr. Armstrong put his arm on his shoulder when they were walking over there, and he saw into his mind and realizes that she's inside his body right now.
Yeah. But you know, like you said, like, it plays out with such a good, like, an effective surprise. Like,
It does.
It really does. And then so they find, like, they're trying to find. There's just, I mean, like, just this wild, like, scene of, like, Carlson after they inject him, like, pinning him down slowly pinning Patrick Stewart down onto the ground, and then Patrick Stewart's like writhing on the ground and like screaming and shit.
Mm-hmm.
It was wild. But then they, you know, like they find like a space to like bring him and like question him or whatever. Hopefully.
Yeah.
Which is like a surgery room or something like that.
And Carlson also asks this like doctor to bring him more shots of the pentothal or whatever they called it, because he mentions that if he slips out from under us, she'll escape. So his like plan is to like keep Dr. Armstrong under hypnosis and asleep for as long as possible until they can hopefully, you know, figure out what they need to figure out.
Yeah, that's right. Like there's like that sequence of like the nurse or whatever guy was like, one dose is usually enough.
Mm-hmm. But as he goes to put in the second dose, Dr. Armstrong speaks up, but it's the female's voice. Yeah. She's like, there's no need for that.
Yeah.
But he does it anyway. So long story short, he does it anyway. So this hypnosis scene is pretty fucking cool too.
Yeah. And again, though, it's like another like, just like really, I don't know, like surprisingly dramatic kind of like point in the movie. You know, he's like questioning. He's got like, you know, the body pinned down. Patrick Stewart starts like, again in like the female voice, sort of like mumbling and shouting and like all this other stuff. And like, it's just, I don't know. It's just, this movie was a lot more like, had a lot more dramatic moments. But the shot of like when they inject him
in the
next with like the dual pentothal or whatever. There's like all the like, there's a, you know, life force coming off of Patrick Stewart's body.
Before that happens though, I want to say there's an interesting thing here where he's talking to the female in Armstrong's body, and he asks her, you know, these different questions like what she wants from him and all these different things, and she explains this whole thing about how, you know, his deepest thoughts and needs is what, so her look like came from his subconscious. Like that's, I'm wording it wrong, but she basically explains that like that not only did the bats and the ships look like that, but she took her shape and language from his mind, that his deepest thoughts and needs and what her body looked like was because of him, which is pretty interesting.
Yeah, so it's like almost like immediately as soon as they had like, you know, been in like psychic presence with each other or something like that, she was able to like read what would be most desirable for
exactly. Thank you.
Or whatever.
Exactly. Yeah. And then it's kind of awkward because he goes to kiss her, but it's obviously fucking like he actually kissed Patrick Stewart, which is great.
Yeah. And that's when like the other goons in the room like try and like pull him off finally.
And that's like you said, when that'd be so gnarly where they shove both the fucking syringes into his neck. That would be brutal.
It'd be nasty.
But like you said, so continue with what you're going to say with the life force going around and everything.
Yeah, it was just, you know, he was like losing his life force. And so it reminded me of this, like another moment where you knew this was a Tobe Hooper movie where there's like these kind of bright electric blue lights happening, which is,
yeah.
You know, and there's like all sorts of stuff just like flying around the room and whatnot. Definitely was reminded me of Poltergeist a little bit.
That's a good point.
Like just like in that scene.
Because in this like whole commotion, Kane gets knocked out for a second, and Percy dies.
Yeah.
And then there's actually another interesting line here, where Carlson sees that it's spreading and that they're too late, and Kane asks what he means by that, and he thinks there might be more victims. So this is when they leave. They leave the hospital, and for some reason they leave with Percy and Armstrong's bodies.
Yeah, that was kind of an interesting. I was like, well, I guess perhaps I mean, they don't know what they could become if they left them.
Yeah,
whatever, but
good point.
Yeah, so they're all on a helicopter, flying, and that's when you kind of get reintroduced to. Oh my God, why do I keep blanking on his name? The dude with the good hair, Floppy.
Yeah, they get a call from Falada.
Falada. Yeah. But that's like while they're on the helicopter, they get this call, and that's when Falada explains that he supposedly killed one of them using that sword that he was injured that he had earlier.
Because up until this point, it hasn't shown the other two guys, so either you think they're dead or you don't really know what's going on. But yeah, he explains that they're still alive, but like you said, he killed one of them. Yeah,
which was supposedly the guard that that we left off with last time.
Yes, but how did he kill him?
He drove his lead sword into his energy.
I love that. Yeah,
area under his heart.
he penetrated him through the energy center just below his heart.
Oh yes, the classic. We all have one, it's there.
We also learned from Falada that only the original 3 can jump bodies. If you get infected or whatever, you're just infected, but you don't have these extra powers.
Yeah,
which isn't necessarily important.
But the thing, the standout thing about this whole helicopter scene, though, a movie.
Oh yeah,
really cool things, but then there's this fucking epic shot of those bodies, dude. Percy and Dr. Armstrong, their bodies just start bleeding out.
It's awesome.
It's all drifting.
It's floating through the air. Yeah.
Floating into this one spot. It's slowly growing and amassing. But it's just this fucking awesome sequence of it just being pulled from their
I thought so too.
Bodies. So
Did not expect that at all.
And then it becomes this image of Space Girl, this bloody image of Space Girl that was there for a moment and then immediately
collapses into collapses into a pool of blood. That was so cool.
It was, dude. That was fucking rad. I thought that was one of my favorite sequences of the movie.
I completely agree. And we also, on the plane, there's also something interesting where Kane asks Carlson, he wants to know what, we've made it this far, now I want you to tell me what really happened on the ship. And so this is where Carlson kind of switches his story up a little bit. And because originally he said that this guy named Rollins destroyed the computer, but we learned that Carlson was the one that destroyed the radio equipment and all the tapes, and that it was him that did it because he basically explains that he didn't want it to reach Earth, and that if it did, he didn't want anyone to know what happened up there. And then he also goes on to explain that while he was on the ship, he opened her sealed animation, and because he couldn't help himself, right?
Yeah, the pull was too real, man. It was too strong.
And he basically goes on to say that he's in love with her on a level that you couldn't understand. And we get a flashback sequence about her calling to him and explaining that she wanted him and it was more than spiritual. This whole part, he kind of explains a lot. And that she took, oh yeah, here's another interesting thing. Sorry if I'm over speaking here. I apologize.
No, you're good, dude. You're good.
But he explains that she took some of his energy and, but gave him some of hers.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I was that's pretty interesting.
Yeah. I know. I was when they dropped that, I was what does that mean for him?
Yeah, because it seems like she chose him, you know what I mean?
Yeah. And then that's when it kind of they kind of cut back to what's happening, and it's London's gone crazy.
Yeah.
This thing is sweeping across the city.
Martial laws in effect.
Yeah, martial laws been imposed. There's like a giant explosion that happens, and
Yeah,
then like I mean,
the
really
city's in disarray.
dude. Yeah, to say the least. Like but late like the tail end of this like movie, including its starting like right here, like you really see some great like extra work. If you ask me, like those, like movies, because of CGI and stuff, they don't always have to employ like full on extras anymore. But this whole like ending had so many extras. All
Jesus Christ did it, and so much going on. Yeah,
all in like makeup and like just like doing their thing. Like at a it was really cool to me. It was really cool.
There's more of it that happens later, and it's more elaborate. But yeah, we get like we get a scene of in the city, and the life forces. The life force is flying around and people are sucking people's life force and destroying things. Yeah, it's like you said, it's pandemonium. Yeah. So the next scene that happens, was like the most random and pointless scene where they go to the prime minister because they're only there for like 2 minutes and then leave. So we don't even really need to talk about it.
Yeah, it was strange. It was like all it basically was that like the prime minister's a fucking psychic vampire.
Because that's it. That's all you need to know. But there was a cool part where they're getting on the copter, and they fly off, and like two of the infected jump off. Yeah, and they end up shooting one off with a flare gun, which I thought was super cool.
Yeah, that was cool. And again, like some of the makeup that was happening with them was pretty dope. But yeah, you're right. It was just like it was just a brief scene that really like. If they had to cut something, like they could have cut that out of the movie, and I would have preferred more space time or something like that. But anyways.
So basically, anyway, they end up back in London, but they like wind up where they land. They wind up like in a quarantine like zone.
Yeah, well, yeah,
like a quarantine camp.
The military's basically like closing off anything. They know that like after 2 hours, basically, you'll either turn to dust.
The incubation period,
the incubation period will be over basically, and you'll either do one or not.
We also learned that they've isolated London, and there's a possibility that they
of thermonuclear.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, there's chance of a thermonuclear device.
Yeah, that was like one of my favorite like moments. I was just like, of course. They're just like, it's the 80s. They're just gonna jump right to like, we're gonna nuke London. Like that. Yeah. That was like, yeah.
We also
clearly at their wits' end. They don't know what the fuck's going on.
Well, I mean, I guess what would you do? Because we also learned that the spaceship is like in orbit above Earth. So I mean, what like, yeah.
Yeah.
But well, I just love.
Yeah. Like, oh, sorry.
No, go.
Yeah, like they dropped that, like, the spaceship's like directly above London at this point, like beaming up all these like souls and shit.
The human souls, that was cool. Yeah,
it was.
And we learned here, like, because obviously at this point we know that Carlson has like this psychic link to her, and he like sometimes knows information that like, how would you know that? But he's the one that explains that like. All these souls are being collected into the spaceship, and that the male vampires have to send their energy through her to the collector, and that Carlson also knows where her body is.
Yeah. Key. Carlson.
Because she's like drawing him. She's drawing him to her.
Yeah.
And that sorry.
Stronger than ever.
One more thing. Sorry. He also explains that like she wants back the energy she gave to me. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh yeah. She gaveth and now she taketh.
Yeah.
But yeah, and so that's when actually that's when Kane and Carlson split. Right, because Carlson steals like a Jeep or whatever to go like.
Yeah, he just takes off
to like head to her. That pull is too fucking real, and then like Kane like basically like commandeers like a vehicle also.
I'm so glad you used that. I was about to use that same word.
Dude, it's like the only.
That's a great word.
It is, dude. That's another real good one. It's like, it's not like, I mean, he basically just like turns around. It was such a funny sequence to me. He just turns around to these like military officers and he's like, "Give me the keys to this car." The car is like, "That's the guy's like, that's basically like my commanding officers." He's like, "Give them to me."
Anytime
he takes his sidearm too.
Yeah.
Like, "Give me your fucking gun."
How demoralizing. But I love the word commandeering, and it makes me think of there's this great like 80s comedy called Cop and a Half.
Oh.
Where he's
Burt
like,
Reynolds.
yeah, well, like the little black kid in the movie. And okay, so I don't know how much you know about skateboarding, but he runs up to this kid, and I'm pretty sure it was a young Andrew Reynolds. I could be wrong, but but he runs up to this kid and he's like, "I'm commandeering your vehicle," and takes the guy's skateboard.
I love it.
Yeah.
And so they basically,
But yeah,
like a sequence of this is what you were talking about earlier, where you get like a little more taste of like what's happening in life.
oh yeah,
Where like
it's bad.
Carlson's off, David's trying to fall, or why do I keep saying David?
I don't know.
I don't know. Sorry. Kane keeps, it's like following him, and you see like things are just falling apart. Every now and then, some life forces flying, like, like just like people have like gnarly, you know, decomposing bodies, and like everything's on fire. Like, all sorts of shit. It's just fucking crazy.
It seems like a large chunk of like the community of this city is also out in the streets, just like running around.
Yeah.
Like it's bad. There's just, like you said, like there'd be like a large group of infected just like jumping on people and downing them, or people fleeing for their lives. You know what I mean? It's just,
yeah,
it's bad.
Yeah. And you also get this kind of like, you know, at one point Carlson stops the car, like his driving, and he is like, you know, all in his head, you know, the space girl's talking to him, and you get a jump scare kind of out of the sequence where it's like he's, you know, staring out the front window of the car, and then all of a sudden, bah, a hand pops out of the side, you know, and tries to get him, and then his car's surrounded by like infected people. Like,
I like how when he leaves, like it's just the ripped off arm, and he's like, just throws it into the back seat.
Yeah. Well, there's also,
but yeah,
like, throughout the driving sequence, there's one other like kind of thing that I thought was kind of cool, and there was this like brief moment where Kane's driving through like a couple of like an alley or whatever, and there's just like this, you know, infected dude right in front of him, and he just splats. It's like it was just like, it looked like someone just threw a bunch of raw meat on the dude's like on the front of the car or something like that. It was such a fun
it was awesome because at this point, like, Carlson sees the building where the energy's coming out through the roof and going up, so he knows where she's at. Yeah. But before, like, at the same time, Kane makes it back to the research center, because there was like a miscommunication or something where he thought that that's where Carlson was heading, so that's where he went. And this is where we run into Falada again for the last time.
Yeah. And you know, like, as soon as you run into him again in this scene, you kind of know something's like a little off. Totally. He's like just staring out the window, looking at the flames, basically burning the city and shit. But you know, that you basically just learn a little bit about like the mental, like, you know, the mental connection again and stuff like that.
Yeah.
You learn a little bit more depth to, you know, what she is a little bit like, she's in this, you know, she's escaped and stuff like that and all that. But it's really just like that shot. I love that when you get to like Faluda approaching Kane with his arms out, and you just see his face all sweaty and stuff, and you're just like, what the fuck is going on here? And like, you know, basically Kane's like telling him at this point, because it's all creepy, like, he's telling him to back up, and he ends up shooting Faluda, which causes his life force to, well, no, it doesn't I mean, he shoots him, but then like Faluda's face like starts like kind of pulsating, like, oh, it's nasty. And then he dies, and Kane takes that lead sword out of the other body.
Yes. So he takes the sword and he starts heading, because Falada tells him that her body's at the cathedral. So he starts heading there, and at this point Carlson's already there, and he finds her body like laying there in the basement under a beam of light, and as he gets closer, she pops back to life. You know what I mean?
Yeah, she sits up, and
Yeah,
Come here.
she's like, "Come to me, be with me. It was intended, you know."
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, it was like, she's like, it was intended for you to bring me to Earth and all this stuff, and she wants to be with him forever.
Yeah, exactly. And then that was one of those moments where you're like there was like a long game that these vampires or whatever were playing.
Yeah, because it's explained at some point that like they've been to Earth before too.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. But yeah, so she stands up and she's like, "Come stand in the light with me," you know.
Which Carlson doesn't even like try to fight. He just like
No.
immediately, you know, falls to her whims, and
Yeah.
next thing you know, they're both naked, just fucking, you know, making out.
Dancing in the moonlight.
Oh wow.
But there's like during all of this, you know, while this is all happening, Kane's like running to the cathedral because his car's like incapacitated, and he's just avoiding just swarms of infected people.
Yeah.
You know, and he eventually makes it to the cathedral where the body's at.
The fact he made it there is like a miracle, because like yeah. This scene is awesome too.
But then, you know, like there was also, I just want to point out, during his like running sequence, there was a couple of cool things. Again, great extra work, but there was like a couple people on fire and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. Good stunt work, yeah.
Just good stunt work as well. But then there's the, when he gets to the cathedral, all this like life force is being like summoned to this like one spot, and up pops out of this like bodies, up pops the other like male body that was discovered
it's like
in space.
This guy just looks like a model, you know what I mean? He's just like
he's just like he's just like just the fucking handsomest dude in London at this point, and he's just like absorbing all of this life force.
I thought that they would have like a little showdown here, like a fight, you know what I mean?
Something, yeah.
But
he
no.
just basically Kane just runs.
Fuck. Yeah, Kane just like bum rushes him.
Just like stabs him right in the fucking energy center.
The energy center, yeah.
And that's when like all the life force energy goes from like blue to like red or whatever.
And he like yeah.
And then the male model turns into a giant bat creature.
That was cool. That was before. Yeah, before dying, he turns into like the bat creature, and then just kind of disappears into nothing.
Yeah.
But that was cool. But yeah, I thought that they would maybe like fight for a little bit, and but no, it was just like he just made a beeline for the guy's energy center. just one quick blow, and that guy was bye.
Well, that's why you don't mess with Detective Kane.
Right. Yeah, he was pretty badass.
But yeah, so he basically enters the cathedral and sees like all the light. He's on a different floor.
Yes.
Than Carlson and the space girl. But he looks down this giant hole where all the life force is coming out of, and he sees those two just like naked and making out in the middle of it, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, like there's this whole like sequence where the space girl's like moaning, like writhing and being like, I just need more of your energy, Carlson. And like
you're one of us.
Yeah. And then Kane's like trying to call out to him and get his attention,
right?
And it's just like definitely a tense sequence, and eventually it results in just the most perfect throw of all time. Kane just like throws the lead sword down to Carlson's outstretched hand, who just immediately grabs it and impales both her and himself.
Yeah, it was like a Tom Brady to Randy Moss like touchdown pass. Yeah. That was cool though, because the way he like goes behind her with the knife and just plunges it through her and sticks both of them with it.
Yeah. Right into their energy centers.
And
then there's this great shot of them like both like basically like groin to groin, and like you see like the sword or supposedly like coming out of each end, and it's all like a light and everything, and then they beam this was like the fucking wildest thing to me. Then they beam up into the spaceship
Yeah.
together, you know, like holding onto each other in the same fashion.
Right.
And the
Then
spaceship just drifts off.
And that's the end. Yeah.
I was like,
so-
what the fuck?
Like, it was probably like, yeah, it was kind of like, what the fuck? Because
Well, no,
they
I was
just
just like, so now they're just off? They're just off?
Yeah.
Like, going
Well-
to a different planet or something? Like,
right, because it's not it's up to you to decide what happened. But probably like 20 minutes into this movie, I was like, and with it going on, it gets more bonkers. But I was like, how is this gonna end? And
yeah.
I don't know. I was like, I'm not saying it was a bad ending. I'm not saying it was a great ending. It was, it wasn't a bad ending, but I didn't think it would end that way. But having said that, I did think it was cool how Carlson like sacrificed himself, you know what I mean, to essentially save, everyone else. Because I think he had like gotten to the point where he knew that essentially he was doomed and that he was going to give in to her. There's nothing he could do. Like he was, you know what I mean? It was out of his control.
Yeah, exactly. Like he was just like, finally, like the pull is too great. Like this is like, am I gonna like live with like trying to fight this, or am I just gonna embrace this moment?
Yeah.
And yeah, it was. You're right, dude. I don't think the ending was bad or like great necessarily. I just think it was abrupt. And that's a good way to put it.
That's
what I was surprised by about it. I was just sort of like, oh, okay.
Because like I said, with how I thought there was going to be a fight between him and the male, like I thought there was going to be a little more, conflict or something that went on. Like it was abrupt. That's a good way to put it.
Yeah, but overall, like this movie, like was fucking wild. Like I loved the idea of the story and everything. I think there's like it was really an interesting combo of like some great special effects, but also being a really like dialogue and like plot heavy movie. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It had a good mixture of both, I think.
Totally.
But yeah,
totally.
I definitely recommend killing some time with it, man. Like it would definitely I'd put that on the list to watch.
Yeah, there's some creativity. There's some great sequences. There's some cool cinematography. Yeah. There's some great effects. It's entertaining.
Yeah, I agree. Lifeforce, 1985.
Yes, you really can't go wrong. I haven't seen every Toby Hooper movie, but you really can't go wrong.
Yeah, they're usually solid and usually entertaining, at least. You know what I mean?
Totally.
All right. Well, hey, hot dogs, we'll leave you with that knowledge. I don't think we have a movie picked out quite yet, but once we do, you'll hear it.
But we're not going to give it away yet. But we might have something a little, special plan for number 20.
Yeah, we got maybe something in the back pocket there.
Right.
So I'm looking forward to, I'll say.
Totally.
Oh, man.
But yeah, we'll figure it out. But yeah, I give this movie 3.5 out of 5. Energy
centers. I'll give it a solid 4.25. I really liked it. The special effects got me
yeah.
in this movie. Like I really enjoyed like the corpses and
for sure.
Like that the shots of like the different when they were like in isolation or whatever, like how this one was acting like in one way and decayed in one way, this one like
true
or whatever. It was they were all different and cool. There's just a lot of cool stuff in this movie. Aside from the sexual tension in this movie, which got like a little obnoxious at times, like that was the only thing that I didn't care like too much for, but it was like an essential part of the movie, which is like part of the whole lure is like the seductive evil, like not true evil, the seductive like almost parasitic like creature is like learning how to like survive in a new alien terrain.
I know what you're saying though, because like I've always been one of those people where I'm not the biggest fan of like gratuitous nudity or sex scenes in movies unless it's like important to the plot point.
Yeah.
But having said that, it was the 80s. But
yeah, no, that's right. Well, that's what I mean. Like, it doesn't deter me because at this point, you just kind of look at it as like almost like kind of like a fun like add into this. Like you're sort of like whatever.
well, then
this movie was really fucking entertaining though, and I really think it's a sleeper of a Toby Hooper movie that I doubt too many people have really gone out of their way to watch. So I really think people should. Just to kind of like if you like his movies in general, you know what I mean.
Or sci-fi, yeah. Go see it.
Yeah, or sci-fi, just in general. All right. Well, we'll leave it there,
man.
hot dogs. Good night.